And starting right now. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Halloween edition of the Blogging Plaza. As you can see, it is Halloween again. I bought the Count Chocolate to celebrate the occasion, but unlike my other Halloween special, this time I decided to make something different, at least to break the mold. I decided that I was gonna pick up a theme for this year. And what theme do you ask? It's none other than I'm gonna pay tribute to an independent film distributor known as Gravitas Ventures. Gravitas Ventures, an independent film distributor created in 2006 made in California. Then it moves locations to Cleveland, Ohio, and up to this day is still distributing lots of independent movies, whether it be in documentaries or dramas or, of course, horror movies. Which it was the kind of like the way I got introduced to this film distribution. How do I know about this one? Well, remember that when PlayStation used to let us rent movies? When this was going, when I was watching all this list of horror movies that PlayStation had, I usually wanted to try to watch the trailers before I made the purchase. And most of them, they always had that logo of Gravitas Ventures, and I was like, these guys, they do a lot. So when PlayStation decided to stop distributing videos on demand, this is why I decided to make a list of all the horror movies that they had and I would like to watch. Of course, that I filter which ones were from Gravitas Ventures, which ones were distributed, and so this one it made me think, you know what? Let's make something like a whole Halloween special, in which I pick 10 of those handpicked Gravitas Ventures distributed movies that I. In order to commemorate them. While some of them doesn't have, the logo up front, and they're still distributed by them. So today and there's no mainstream horror movie that I'm gonna pick up. All of them, they only have one thing in common: they're distributed by Gravitas Ventures. Okay, I'm keeping repeating myself a lot, so let's not waste any time. So let's go with the first movie that is.
Are you gonna do a show this year?
I promise I will have something for you. Something that just might be the prize piece of my entire collection. I call her Masquerade.
The Holly brothers. We're very happy that you decided to help them, Richard.
I've earned the right to walk away on my own terms.
Of course you have. This will be fast and easy.
I'm not doing this alone. You know I have a partner.
You mean your daughter?
It's a smuggler's house on Halloween. We're not sneaking in.
Percy is sick. And I don't want him around my daughter.
I ordered the remains of a vampire.
We wouldn't be in this situation if you'd open the door! That are physically impossible to do. The girl out there, it's a real vampire. the money, but that's the easy part. Getting out of here is gonna be hell.
The good things the devil do, from what you just saw in the trailer, the biggest thing that got my attention to go to this movie is that it showcased Kane Hodder as one of the actors. But let me tell you, it's not exactly very important because this guy is only there for a glorified cameo. But still, they want a top billing on it. But anyway, the movie itself is about this guy who he's kind of like a museum artifact collector, and he gets kind of like this big box in which it had kind of like this vampire woman that had how can I say, a stake in her heart. But of course his wife removes it, and of course she begins to awaken and bringing blood and death. But that's not all. At the same time, this guy has to deal with his almost 40-year-old insufferable stepdaughter, and also at the same time, not only he had to deal with a vampire creature, it also had to deal that at the same time a group of robbers, which is this guy, his daughter, and of course Kane Hodder. They infiltrate the house in order to steal their valuables. So pretty bad timing when you have criminals going to steal your valuables, but in the middle of that. And from then on, of course, it is typical horror thing. And honestly, I found that movie a little bit okay. It's a little bit, although it comes in terms that it goes a little bit silly, a little bit, how can I say, mean-spirited, because even kids that are not exactly safe from that. But I'll say that again, it goes a little bit on the silly side, mostly because it comes to a moment in which one of the characters kind of loses its hands, and the best solution in order to fix broken hands is that you just tape knives into their hands and make them look like kind of like you have the hands for a knife, something like that. That was kind of like one of the stupidest solutions I saw on a horror movie, because either way, if you want to scratch your nose or something like that, it would have worked. Still, I gotta give it praise that some of the blood effects are practical and really good. Although some of the character motivation comes off a little bit, out of obligation. Although things get a little bit better when finally the guy and the father, they decide to team up for a bigger threat. And you kind of buy it that they're not exactly kind of building a friendship. They're just making kind of like a kind of truce in order to not let this creature get loose. Because another thing that I do remember about this movie is that the creature apparently also has hypnotic powers, which kind of comes out of nowhere, and also I do want to say that somehow some of the sound effects kind of sounds like there's a crowd watching the movie, because I swear to God that sometimes I do hear some laughter here and there. But overall, I will say that this is an okay way to start out Gravitas Ventures distributed movie.
Did you just film my sister's tits?
Man, boobs in 3D!
It's fine. Make sure you stick to the main road. And don't stop till you get to shooting range. Copy that? That's great. Now we're done.
Oh! Oops! What was that? Did you hear that?
I did. Maybe it's airship or bats.
Bats. I hate bats.
So you're the thing, my ass.
What? Got my weapon, you asshole.
Why don't you suck my balls?
The land of the brave, the land of the dead. You fucking loser.
If you know me, I am a sucker for found footage movies, and it doesn't matter if it sucks or it doesn't. And this one came out being, well, really enjoyable, at least in my opinion. Despite that, it kind of how can I say, breaks some rules to make a decent found footage movie, but the execution comes off as, how can I say, how can I best describe it? Okay, first of all, let me talk about the story, which the movie involves Nazi zombies, which is about these. It's about these group of German people who, because it takes place in Germany, they infiltrate this American protected secret abandoned Nazi warehouse that the Americans are just keeping an eye off. So these group of how can I say? There's one guy who he armed himself with a big armor, and he decides to film everything. He just wants to infiltrate that abandoned Nazi place in order to find the puzzle. Sorry. And so, like I was saying, they wanted to infiltrate there not just to find some scoop, but also they have hopes that they can find some Nazi gold. And the gold is actually a red herring, because most of the movie centers around looking at the point of view of this guy's really, really good camcorder that he has integrated in his suit. He even has a secondary. He even has kind of like a kind of like a makeshift communicator on his wrist where he communicates with one of his friends. He gets in. You see him getting inside that bunker. Like the movie said, the title said so. That bunker, and then he realizes that that bunker is not only kind of abandoned, it also home of Nazi zombies, and there he has to deal to survive the Nazi zombies, as well as trying to avoid the Americans who are taking this place, keeping it in secret. Let me tell you that this movie, I wouldn't say that it's exactly kind of like horror. The best way I can describe it is that if you wanted to see a video game cutscene going long, this is this movie, because it's very action-packed. It's kind of reminded me of Hardcore Henry, but Hardcore Henry is a little bit better. But you can tell that there's some inspiration with this one. You see kind of like the main character, grabbing the gun or battling the zombies, or running away from the military here and there. Actually, now that I remember, this is probably one of the first movies in which you're gonna see a POV shot of someone being peed. No, seriously. There's a moment in which the guy hides and one of the soldiers urinates on top of him while he was hiding. That was kind of gross, I'll say. But either way, you're gonna like. This is a movie that you should just kind of like cap off your intelligence, and you'll enjoy a glorified video game movie. Although some things, of course, doesn't make sense, or some things are not exactly explained. There is kind of, like, for example, the Nazi gold is a MacGuffin, and it pretty much kind of tells you that the reason why the Nazis are zombies is because of aliens. But the aliens, it doesn't. It was probably kind of like used as a second thought, and more than the main thing. Oh, and here's something that probably you might wanna check out this movie, because this movie also includes a Nazi Adolf Hitler. I'm not kidding. This movie is as close to become a Wolfenstein movie. So yeah, just turn off your brain and you will enjoy Bunker of the Dead.
Help! Help!
You're gonna die!
Mama.
Now this movie comes from France. Yep, this French movie called Meander is about this woman who somehow she just finds herself kind of like in a pipe maze in which she has to go forward if she wants to get out. But the more she goes, she finds obstacles, or she finds points of no return. She finds that the more she gets into it, every obstacle becomes deadlier and deadlier. And to make things worse, she has a time limit in which she finds out that she has a bracelet on her arm displaying a timer in which every 12 or 11 minutes the corridors will activate kind of like a mechanism that it's gonna torch her, and so she must find a safe space in order to do that. I'm not gonna lie, I was really thrilled with this movie. If you like movies a little like Cube, you're probably gonna get into this, because not many. This movie is, of course, has the same cube thing in which you know that she's captured by some kind of alien thing, and you don't know exactly what they are or what do they want, but some of the things it gets clearer the more you go on. But still, I think that this movie is pretty much a big phobia, claustrophobic, I'll say. This one brought me the intensity, because this kind of made me realize that this is a scenario that I might not survive, because I might have a little bit of a secondary claustrophobia feeling to it. She's really in all these. Unlike Cube, in which everyone has kind of even like a space to walk. Imagine this woman being like a rat in a maze, in which all the spaces are really tight, and there are moments in which you can't turn back. At least, and honestly, it gave me kind of like, oh my god. It gives me the chills just thinking about it, especially when in moments in which she has to go really, really tight. Or imagine she finds obstacles like, for example, detours, wrench paths, or there's even an acid pit in which you have to watch your step. Pretty much most of the dialogue is mostly English and French, because there's a few moments in which she talks, I'll say. What else there is? You see some motivation with why one of the character's psychology. The ending is fine, I'll say. The ending is really despair-inducing. That's pretty much the best way I can say. So not much I have to say. This is one I do recommend you if you want to kind of like, if you like, again, movies like Cube or or a little bit of Saw, if I want to be honest, I'll say. So give yourself a little bit of the fear to close bases with this one.
What could you tell us about the history of the warehouse?
It's kind of an eerie place to be at in the dark.
There's an old legend that if you go inside the facility at midnight, perform a certain ritual, you can ask for whatever you want, as long as you're willing to pay the price.
There was a couple. The wife became very ill. Her husband participated in the ritual and was guaranteed her full recovery. But in exchange, he had to surrender the souls of his 3 children. They were found, bound in stocks, having been axed in the head until death.
Dark forces, both black and white, reaching out through space and light. Be he far or be he near, in the wind I send this rhyme to summon the first fallen at this time.
Okay, here is another found footage movie, First Summoning. This one you can see that is more inclined to be kind of like the Blair Witch Project knockoff, in which the first movie is about this guy who he wants to make a documentary about a warehouse in which they say that there are some rituals happening, and again it takes a little bit kind of like the Blair Witch Project, in which the guy gets too into this, and so much that he even kind of trespasses to get some information. Okay, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, trespasses to cemeteries and other houses because he just wants to get information about this place. And the more the movie goes on, and the guy just kind of feels unnaturally absorbed and obsessed of making this movie, so much that even his friends were kind of like very skeptical, going like, "Dude, this guy's crazy. I think we should not do this," or something like that. But the guys keep insisting, saying, "No, we gotta do it. We gotta do it." And of course, just like the Blair Witch Project, it doesn't end well. For this one, I'll say that this is a movie that mostly is a little bit of a pass, I'll say, because unlike the Blair Witch Project, this movie really feels like it drags on and on and on, and not much interesting things happen until at least the climax, in which it involves a satanic rituals, and our characters are in danger. The least you could, unlike Bunker of the Dead, in which it felt like there is a purpose on filming because the guy is taking picture for prosperity, and it kind of gave it kind of like a video game feeling. This one, of course, it also matched out with the moment saying that, "Dude, why are you filming this? What's the reason? Who edited this one?" Which honestly, at least on the Bunker of the Dead, kind of gave I forgot to mention that it gave a reason why people are seeing this. This one, I couldn't exactly buy it. Some shots were kind of like, why do you film that, or something like that. The only reason you'll kind of get is that the guy is too into it, and of course, not much of the characters are technically kind of likable. And honestly, you kind of, this movie gets a little bit too predictable, I'll say. The least I could say is that at least it gave a creepy ending shot, which I'm not gonna exactly reveal it for anyone who is curious, but let's say that it's not very pleasant for the characters. But either way, I think that this movie needed to deliver a little bit more to give out a high recommendation, because just seeing kind of like the satanic ritual with a few monster things that goes on the end, I think the way it drags on a little bit too much.
You okay?
The numbers are down.
I think the audience just wants more.
More what? We almost died 3 times in Brazil.
Well, maybe they want to see us die.
Come in, dear. Come in, all of you. I love the pendant you're wearing. Where did you get it?
Wallace gave it to me on a trip to Chile.
So how far is this wedding? Who'll be there?
Are you okay? Wake up! Be careful. I don't know. She must have jumped out of the window or something. This can't be.
Lord of darkness, command this soul into my son, for you have damned him into your kingdom!
Oh dear, the 16th episode. Remember that I didn't give too much of a recommendation to first summoning? Well, the 16th episode, I will say that is probably the stinker of my taste. What is it about? It's about these struggling YouTubers who they're looking kind of like a big break, so they go to this, I think that is in Morocco or some place that I don't know, but it's a fictional town named Casablanca. They spend there to find kind of like their big break in some monastery from what I can remember. But then they get invited to this apparent wedding. But it wasn't a wedding, but it was more kind of like one of those satanic rituals. And then the girl of the group, she begins to feel ill, and then she becomes possessed. And well, the other two are trying to survive and trying to find a way if there's a way to rescue their possessed friend. Oh my god, this movie, it was a little bit too long for my taste, and it drags on and on. And one of the biggest problems that I have with this movie is that the characters are not entirely likable. It's almost like you're watching 3 different faces of Paul Rogan, or you know what, the guy who most people don't like. Because, well, they're YouTubers, they have kind of like an attitude, especially one of them who is kind of like very impatient, and there's another guy who he just wants to find his big break. And the woman, they gave out kind of like exposition in which she was previously possessed in another time, and honestly they gave out more this information more in exposition instead of showing us. That bring out a kind of like a big confusion to what he was doing. And another thing that bothered me about this movie is that it's cinematography. The cinematography is because it cannot make its mind if it wants to be a found footage movie, because we see POV shots of a camera, and then and sometimes it also turns into normal. And so, movie, make up your mind. You want to make a found footage movie or a regular movie? But now we have to believe that we are watching the kind of like the lost episode from that YouTube channel. And seriously, that got me kind of like confused. So yeah, you know that at the end it comes with exorcism, then it becomes a little bit kind of like religious. It didn't mesh up very well, at least for me. And there's also the movie also wanted to play cute, becoming self-aware by saying that, well, one guy is a big fan of found footages, and he just said that, hey, I want to make found footage movies because I want to revolutionize by making that. We're gonna make the found footage in which the cameramen survive. It has been done. It's called As Above, So Below. It's one of those movies in which the cameraman survive. But anyway, I don't think I recommend the 16th episode. For me, this was a stinker of a movie. A stinker that it doesn't deserve a 17th episode.
Party has arrived.
Bernadette went all out. Well, she is the queen of details.
Who's left?
Lily.
Easy trigger.
Hey, man, I think you have one more stop. Thank you. Lily's not on this list.
From horror icon and scream queen Danielle Harris.
Might be our last party here ever.
2 best friends.
Tonight, 8 friends.
One of your friends is missing.
Where's Lily?
Ooh, it's part of the murder mystery we have to solve, isn't it?
Will play a little game.
There's evidence to be found. To find it, think like a killer.
Gnarly.
That's nasty.
Found it!
Where every guest has a secret.
You've been spying on us? Are you ready to see your best friends behind closed doors?
Stop it! Lily.
Yes, Lily. What did you do to her? Now, you will notice that you can't move your body from the waist down.
And every secret has a price.
What is going on?
Where is she?
This is where the game really gets going. For every question I answer, you have to give me something. I get to give you a haircut. What? It's still Blaine.
What did you do?
Among friends.
A group of friends, they decided to make a murder mystery party. They go to this house and of course they play along until they get drugged. And one of the women, who is this woman named Bernadette, she begins to have a very, very sadistic way to interrogating them and going deep into a certain incident that involved a girl named Lily. Lily, and of course she decides to do it in a, how can I say, by making them play a very, very sadistic game. For example, having the rules, like for example, they each one of these guys are allowed one question, but in order to have this question answered, they must give out something, which usually involves scalping their heads or cutting their nails, and of course, this Bernadette woman, she goes deeper and deeper into these guys involving certain incidents that gonna break their friendships, because it is a big tale of how can I say, sexual interactions, cheatings, and so on, which basically it all ends up with this character named Lily apparently disappearing or dead. Well, I gave my best to bring out a synopsis about this movie, and this is from me because I actually watched this movie twice. One was many years ago, and then the other time was a year. And by the way, this is a movie that I do recommend it also if you are kind of for a small thrill here and there. But if there's one thing that this movie wins, if the actress of Elisa Lobbit, who plays the Bernadette character, because the way she acted, she was excellent. She actually carries this movie, playing out like this woman who is kind of like a psychologist, and that she wants to get into this matter, but in the most sadistic way, I'll say. You'll see her that she has that whenever she changes the rules or she wants to show up there, she's totally serious, and she's a woman that you don't mess up with. Another thing that I do want to say is that this movie also has another extended cameo of Kane Hodder playing a limousine driver. But that's all I have to say about Kane Hodder, just in case. This is the second time Kane Hodder came out in one of those Gravitas Ventures movies. And although the movie feels like it. Honestly, I think that this movie it goes on a little bit too quick, especially because it takes place in one place and you just get a little bit information about these characters, what they were doing. You see the perspective of what is showing up on a video, because this woman managed to record it with security cameras everything that happened during an incident that gonna test out the friendship of these couple of people who the more you see them, they're pretty much assholes. Although they're assholes in which it kind of makes you question if they do this, if they kind of deserve this or not. Or maybe two or one of them, they kind of did deserve their this as their comeuppance. But what kind of makes it a little bit comedic, at least in my opinion, is that one of the characters kind of ruins the whole thing because she actually eats some shrooms, and during the whole movie she's hallucinating like, and sometimes she even makes the situation worse for the other people, and that's kind of hilarious. And let me tell you, but I will say this, that this movie actually kind of lacks a climax, I'll say. It lacks kind of like closure, because the closer it can get it that you see the POV, kind of like the point of view of the character who is on shrooms, and she begins to hallucinate. And that one takes almost like, I think like 10 minutes that we get to see this hallucinatory ride, and then the movie finally continues until it comes to a point it was like, huh? That's it? It's almost like the movie kind of forgot to give itself an ending. That's the best way I can describe it. But honestly, I think I can give a mild recommendation to Among Friends, and see if your friends they have some respectable secrets, but not these people. But again, just watch it at least to see how Alyssa Lobbit plays this character magnificently.
「あるものは海からやってきた。あるものは空から飛んできた。ただ、奴らの生存目的はただ一つ。共食いだ。」そのためには人間の体を使う。そしてその体を使って戦う。
Meatball Machine. My God. Just when I thought that Terrifier was the gorier one. Okay, how can I explain Meatball Machine? Apparently, it's about these parasitic aliens or parasitic beings that they come from out of nowhere. They're shaped like kind of like a metallic squids. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. They find a human host and they possess them by inserting them into their bodies and then coming up with wires that it possess their body, like here, like there. It turns into something monstrous, and to cap it all off, they put it kind of like a screw on both of their eyes, and they kind of take over, and they look for other possessed people in order to have a battle so they can eat the heart, which this is where the parasite is residing. It eats them and then find their fill here and there. That's honestly, this is kind of horrific. It's almost like going even further than how can I say The Last of Us, I'll say, but even bloodier and even gorier. And this movie centers around this guy who is kind of a little bit very introverted. He's in love with a girl, and once he finally managed to talk to her, his girlfriend gets possessed by one of these things, and this guy he feels remorseful because he couldn't do anything, and of course we get more information because there's another guy who is hunting these creatures. So because his daughter she's almost possessed by these creatures, but she needs she needs to eat the heart of those beings in order to keep her alive here and there. Man, I'll say that for Japanese, the practical effects are really good and really gory, and it is a disturbing thought thinking that that these creatures they just do this out of, how can I say, out of survival. And by the way, I did forget to mention that not only they turn their beings in their body in kind of like monsters, it also kind of weaponizes their body part, like by turning their hands into drills and their stomach into guns. It's all It's all kind of like ridiculous, and even the bystanders are not safe. It's so violent that even a little girl is not safe from this. Not just a little girl. Not a boy also is not safe. So you might find this movie kind of like in a bad taste, but it's a taste that is kind of acquired if you can handle these kind of movies. The best way I can describe it, the violence is kind of similar to if you kind of like movies like Tokyo Gore or Robo Geisha, which has this kind of like ultra violent feel. And by the way, this movie, I heard that it had a sequel. I'll say maybe I'll watch it if I get the possibility one of these days. But either way, Meatball Machine. Well, this is no spaghetti that you want to get into.
Every house has a story that lives inside it.
It's the Booth House.
Like a memory in a brain. The characters of these stories are the ghosts of the people who once inhabited these places, forgotten by the passage of time.
What are we doing here? In this house?
I know what you're looking for. It's in this house.
What's in this house?
Keep looking. It's right in front of you.
Do you ever get tired? Doing the same thing over and over and over?
They live inside us. Guys, I gotta be honest. I didn't like this one. This one is based on one of the episodes of I think it's a series called The Witching Hour. It's about this guy who he moves into this house with his disabled daughter. And he just goes there because he wants to find inspiration to write a script because he's a script writer. And according to what the description says, little that he knows is that he is living his own story. Just like that, the biggest main thing about this movie is saying that every house has this story. And what made this movie kind of like a chore to watch it? First of all, almost all of these Gravitas Ventures movies, it was kind of like an hour and a half long. But this one in particular, this one was 2 hours long, and boy, that it dragged on, and it got me bored, and it was kind of like a chore. There's some interesting aspects, to be fair, I'll say. The interesting aspect about this movie is that it wanted to play out kind of like this unreliable narrator type of storytelling, in which pretty much our guy is technically struggling to find an idea for his story, and you also feel that he feels kind of like frustrated with his on taking care of his disabled daughter. Even though the disabled daughter didn't do anything wrong, the guy, he almost kind of like for no reason feels tired of her, and that makes him kind of like unlikable. But another thing that kind of makes this movie a little bit dragging on is that there are times in which he decides to go to his computer and then he begins to type the script. And he goes to buy the book saying, okay, what are some movie monsters that there exist? Okay, let's see this list. And for example, he goes, okay, first, I want to go with serial killer. And then he writes out kind of like a knockoff of Halloween with Jason Voorhees, but instead of a Jason Voorhees wearing a hockey mask, is wearing a black cat hat mask. And then it kind of ends up, all these kind of like ends up kind of like stupidly. For example, with the serial killer, the story ends up with that when he's about to kill kind of like the main character of that story, which is always a woman in white. He begins to say, sliced to, you know what, I don't remember. It was sliced to meet you or something like that. Nice to meet you, or nice to meet you, something like that. And the guy's like, what? No. Everything on the garbage. And I was like, dude, just one mistake? No. And then he writes about a scarecrow, and it ends up poorly when the woman technically survives the scarecrow, but she gets run over by a car. And the guy's like, no, it doesn't work. And then finally he decides to try out with the clown. Man, what is it about? And the clown story actually gets better, but it ends stupidly when the woman, she say, are you gonna chop me? And then even the clown is like, what? At least that gave me a little bit of a mild chuckle on this boring movie. And then we get kind of like the climax in which we see the father guy kind of that he lost his daughter. And this one, it gives out some of the answers of what he's struggling, and he sees, of course, goes off with all the three stories, I'll say. And by the way, all the three stories are played by the same actor of the father, I'll say. And again, I'll say that this is more kind of going into a psychological horror more than playing horror. But for 2 hours long, it kind of dragged on, and I was pretty much bored with this movie. If you want to watch it, probably check it out. If I get the chance, or if I find a way to watch it, maybe I'll give the chance the section in the witching hour. I think this is gonna be kind of like 30 minutes or so. I don't know about this, but either way, this is not a recommendation, at least for me.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome Welcome to the greatest show under the big top.
Hello? Hey, we need a room.
Theater of Thrills.
Why don't you come with me and I'll help you find your mom and dad? So you're not alone.
I'm not alone.
Big Top Evil. Man, this was kind of like the biggest B movie I have seen this year, and this is from me coming from after watching Pearl this year. So what Big Top Evil is? It's about this is the story of one guy who is in jail, and he's narrating the story of how he and his friends they wanted to go sightseeing to a place where murder kind of like a murder spree happened kind of like in the middle of nowhere, and so once they go there then they get attacked by cannibal clowns. Just like the title says, Big Top Evil is about these carnival clowns who they hunt down victims and they eat them. And wow, this movie was kind of like mix out a lot of things that you find in these kind of like exploitation movies, and it kind of glorifies it, I'll say. And considering that this is another one of those movies in which it doesn't do any justice to any clowns, and so honestly it kind of makes me think that it's because of these horror movies that the reason why they're not very fond of clowns. Poor clowns. Now I'm feeling bad about this. Okay, but anyway, some things that you're gonna notice is that of course the characters are just kind of like just stock to be in a meat cleaver. One in particular kind of wants you to beg to be killed, which is this guy who is ultra nerdy but also kind of like ultra childish, I'll say. Yeah, he's kind of like guy who's like, hey look, popcorn. And the guy is like, oh my god, this guy is so childish in a more ridiculous way. But it kind of takes its time a little bit in order to get to the clowns, but of course the payback is all worth it. Especially that a little bit of what gives the movie a little bit of a taste is that we got Bill Moseley playing as the the head of the circus. The guy who he's well known for The Devil's Rejects, I'll say. Bill Moseley still does his really redneckish accent. And by the way, now that I remember, the clowns are also rednecks to amplify a little bit more of the redneck horror that this movie has. If I want to say a little bit of weird things that this movie has, is that this movie is told by the perspective of the sole survivor of the whole thing, in which he gets accused for killing his other friend, and in order to get an appeal, he's telling the story to a lawyer, and of course there's some moments in which you see moments that he wasn't there, and it gives me the Invader Sim question: how the guy knows this happened and he wasn't there? Especially because because out of nowhere, the movie brings out more meat fodder by having kind of like a couple of robbers who they just go on a killing spree, stealing money, and they're just there only to give more people to kill for the clowns. And also this is another one of those movies in which apparently they didn't have enough budget to film an ending. So the ending is like, well, this happened and then I got out. And we don't see much of it. It's almost like it wanted to end on a note, but then it was like, oh yeah, that happened and all these things. But either way, this was an enjoyable film. This is something, I will say that this movie is a little bit better when it's about killer fun houses, unlike, well, the fun house, which was a little bit tame in my opinion. So, but I do warn you that the movie is also very gory and very bloody. So honestly, this looks perfect for a good Halloween watch for a B horror movie. My Gravitas Ventures commemoration, I decided to go with Alienween. Why? Because of the title, I just decided to go, okay, let's finish up with Alienween. This one was made in Italy, and usually I will say that I always leave the best for last sometimes. This one, not exactly is the case, I'll say, but because I'll give it credit that it's almost like a trauma / full movie entertainment movie gone wrong, I'll say, but Alienween, okay, how do I describe it? Because the premise is crazy enough. It's about that it's at Halloween, and apparently there's a meteor shower that in reality they're aliens that they barf some slimy gook onto their victims, so they can take. So basically, they take the alien goop, kind of melt their faces, they melt their body, and then later they get taken over, kind of like parasites. I'll see. And this one, it centers mostly on this group of characters who. At the first group, they're just here, to celebrate Halloween with drugs and hookers, and then it is followed by another group who it is led by this jealous woman who she doesn't want her boyfriend to get into this. So when they meet there, but unfortunately one of those people is possessed by the alien goop here and there. More than horror, I'll say that this is kind of like a comedy. I'll say it's a comedy horror with low with a kind of like its limited budget, and you can tell that there was a passion involved into it because the prop effects as well as the costume design of the monsters is really good, I'll say, but it's the cinematography that almost kills it. they wanted to go into this kind of like this all dark and all black and with some limited color lights. But unfortunately, also it wastes no time of having so much kind of like effect shots, lots of close-ups, and most annoyingly of all, this movie is capable to give you an epilepsy because of the flashing lights. It has lots of flashing lights, I'll say. It's so much that this movie, I have to give you a seizure warning to let you know that this is not exactly a movie that it's gonna be good for you, for at least in health, I'll say. So you have to be in a good mood and be ready to watch this kind of movie. So there's again a little continuing on a little bit on the comedy. The movie is sometimes it jumps to kind of like this radio show in which it's about this kind of like this nasty radio host in which he say, hey, this is a radio host doing this, and he's not appreciated, but the guy is like, oh, I'm gonna continue on whether you like it or not, and things get a little bit wackier because you get exposition saying that these events are happening all over the world, and the guy is like, he doesn't care, he just continues on with his radio channel. But this only serves a little bit to use as a check the gun almost at the end of the movie. And by the way, despite that the movie kind of goes a little bit into the comedic route here and there, it kind of changes tones almost halfway through the movie when the exposition goes on that there is a tragic story between our the main characters. And I was like, okay, movie, so you want it to become tragic here and there. Just for the sake of making our characters kind of like a little bit more likable. Well, a few are. But if you get into... But this is a movie that is hard to take it seriously when again, it has kind of like these comedic tones. Like, for example, there's kind of like a shot in which you give a slap and then plays out, like, for example, multiple shots of someone getting slapped, like something like that. So I only recommend Alienween as a curiosity's sake. Still, I warn you with the flashing that it has a lot of flashing lights, and even though it looks like a glorified Spirit of Halloween commercial, I think that it is understandable considering that it is on a budget, not unlike, well, the Monsters Netflix movie that I still have to watch. Probably I might watch it if I feel like it. So there guys, that was my Gravitas Ventures edition of my Halloween marathon of 2022. So I hope you guys have a very, very well-deserved happy Halloween. And what do I get next year? Who knows? Maybe I'm gonna go light, or depending on how I feel like it. But in the meantime, enjoy your Count Chocula cereal.